Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another Imaging USA Unpacked. This is going to be a great session. I have the honor and privilege of introducing you to Dan McClanahan. Dan, thank you so much for joining us here again today.
I'm amped. Happy to be
Awesome.
here. I enjoyed
Oh,
imaging, so this would be a cool follow-up.
yes, we're going to be talking about your session of imaging, which is called Shoot with Purpose. I also want to thank everybody in the chat who has joined us here today. This is for you. This is for you. So please, if you have any questions at all, some things you want to revisit from Dan's session at Imaging USA, put your questions inside of the questions panel, and we'll be happy to answer as many as we can. So Dan, we're
Absolutely.
gonna we're gonna dive into it because your work is tremendously inspiring. Um, I had the opportunity of looking at your online portfolio, and I encourage you all to look at Dan's portfolio because it's incredible. And I noticed that I'm not sure if it's timing or what, but you got Caitlin Clark, and she's hot right now out there. And that image of
Mhm.
her was fantastic.
I appreciate that.
Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about that purpose.
Yeah, so this will give you a little insight into the commercial world. I was hired to photograph Caitlin for a grocery store chain called Hy-Vee, and I had her for about 20 minutes. And the first 18 of those minutes probably were spent getting the shot list knocked out. So it's like Caitlin standing, smiling at the camera, Caitlin with a ball on her hip, Caitlin holding Chinese food, Caitlin holding a Hy-Vee bag. They made these cardboard cutouts where she's like spinning Chinese food on her finger that are life size that are in the stores. It's pretty cool. But then at the end, in a job like that, I always try and get done a little early and then have like a plan B in the wings in case I get to have a couple minutes with a person just to photograph for me. And I had that with her. So the shot that you saw that I posted for the tournament literally was just a picture that I took at this grocery store job that I had a raw file, and I was like, time to make something cool. So I just made that for me for fun, for portfolio slash to share in the hype with everyone else that's loved watching her this season. But I've done that same thing. Like I photographed with the Bears quarterback last fall, Justin Fields, and we got through this really long shot list for Dunkin' Donuts. And at the very end, I got him for like 10 minutes in his uniform and pads and stuff with my Godox second string lights. And it was all like the background was junk. I had to extract them and build composites. But I got two really cool portfolio pieces from that just because I was ready and I had pre lit it and I had it on the iPad. And we got done early, and I was like, your car doesn't come for 10 minutes, but we could do this if you want. And he was like, okay. Um, so it's
Awesome.
always good to over prepare in the event that, like, when you're given an opportunity. I actually had an assistant that was the guy that gave me this habit. He's like, you got to have something in the wings in case you get extra time. And I was like, really? Okay. And he was right. So now I always do that. Sometimes you don't get to do it, and then it was a lot of wasted work for nothing, but that's okay. Still playing
No,
with lights and cameras, so it's more fun than a real job.
absolutely. Get a chance to play and experiment. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. So one thing I do admire about your work that I've seen is it's it's fresh, it's new, but it's not limited. So it's not like I'm doing commercial work, so I'm going to advertise only products and commercial. When I look at your body of work, it's like I see these fantastic composites, I see these fantastic wedding images, I see fantastic product all in your portfolio in your gallery, showing this is like all of Dan, this is all of me, not just commercial, but I love photography. I love to shoot. I love to create. I love to be creative, and it shows in your work.
That is, depending on who you ask, that is a bad thing to do. I feel like it's a good thing to do. In the commercial world, though, I've been advised like you want to really have a clear, singular message of like I'm the guy that does this thing, and then you'll get all the jobs doing that thing. But I personally, um, we'll just call it ADHD, like jumping around. The thrill of solving problems with interesting people is what makes me love this job. And when I reflect back on my entire career, like the most fruitful part for me isn't the making of the cool picture. It's like the experience to create with people, and everyone comes together, and there's like this experience that leaves everyone different, especially in portraits. Like if you can show someone the dignity that they possess, that they struggle to see themselves, and then they leave holding their head higher, that is the everything. So no matter what I'm doing, I'm always trying to bring that mindset of like, how can I do this to the best degree possible in the event that it creates an echo of more meaning than just like the monetary transaction. Um, do I always succeed at that? No. But usually, I don't know. If you give me a box in which to create, I can be really creative in that constraint. Whether that be like, here's a 17-year-old and this is who they are, make that look sweet. Or like, this is a girl on white seamless paper. What can we do with light to give variety in the 18 minutes that we have to photograph with her? There's always, you define the parameters of the challenge and then you step up to it and like figure out how best to meet it. But I'm always palpably passionate, probably, and that's contagious to people on set. Like if you're loving what you're doing, it's a lot easier for other people to buy in and also love it. And I think you see that in the work with the energy that you
Absolutely.
mentioned.
Absolutely. I had to share it. It's like, look, you got to see this. You got to see this. It's great work. I mean, we're used to seeing PPA where we have the honor and the privilege of working with fantastic photographers, but it's always amazing to have those that I personally connect with through their work. It's like, oh, I can visualize what happened there and how this made me feel, and I'm so much more appreciative of that. So, yeah, it's fantastic. How long does it take to like when you working in that kind of environment? You have these not limitations but goals by the client
Yeah.
and your work to come up with your style. How long does it take to develop your own style to be comfortable with your parameters?
I'd say I'm still developing it. Um, and there's different phases to it, you know? Like, technically, we are the best thing we can be is masters of our craft. So I'm a big believer in screwing around and trying stuff and failing and like through that process learning new tools. So when I go into an environment like the Caitlin shoot where you've got very little time, I've got 2 dozen styles that I've done before enough to know I can execute them confidently. So then the challenge is discerning which ones are the most appropriate to tell the story the best way for the client. So it's not like my style is a singular technique. It's more like a complex tool bag of skills and knowing which tool to use for which story. Does that make sense?
Right, right.
I don't know if
I
that's
can
the
see
answer
that.
you were looking for, but like some jobs call for, I just did a campaign for a dermatology chain and it was all like real people with like hairy shoulders and moles and like all the stuff. And the goal of it was to be the opposite of normal beauty marketing, which is like perfection and like embrace truth and have it be really authentic. But then the light I had to come up with for that was really um, soft and intimate feeling. And it was like different than my normal style that's really animated, but I had to modify it to best tell the story for the client. So there's always nuances and changes. And then if you do the same thing too much over and over, it stops to being fun for me. So I'm always trying to, tinker and micro adjust and push and pull and see what happens if I add this kind of fill light to this situation and like just learn, never stop learning, I think is maybe part of the secret. We got a
Yeah,
couple questions in here now too. I
we
know I'm sure
do.
you're
Let's
not on that, but
no, we could go. This is for them. Good. The more
oh
questions,
yeah.
the merrier. So, let's see what we got.
Edward asked what sparked your journey. I was in college and I was going to school for writing and music. And I was a journalism major, so I ended up signing up for a photojournalism elective to fulfill that requirement. And I went into this class, and immediately it just clicked. Like my whole life, I'd always struggled to draw well or paint. Like what I was told was art, I was not good at, so I never went in that direction. But as soon as I sat in this class, we got the first assignment was go out and find a person and make portraits of them. and I had so much fun. And apparently, I just talked to this professor again. Um, the average student would turn in a CD of like 30 pictures, and I turned in like 600 pictures, and we did all this stuff, and it didn't feel like homework to me, but um, I got a perfect score on that assignment, and I got brought into her office and was told like, you should consider switching to this. Like you've got the fire that it will take to make it through the journey because it's not an easy journey. So I'm extremely grateful for that experience that kind of pulled me just in time to graduate and realize I didn't want to write anymore. And then there was a recession, and then I just started shooting a lot because it was fun, and it ended up turning into a business. But it was for me just one of the first mediums I'd ever connected with where I could get what was in my head out in a way that people could understand. I'm also a musician, and I've met a ton of photographers that are also musicians because I feel like the whatever's firing in our brain when we're creating with light and people is very similar to that feeling that we get when we're creating in the language of music with other musicians. So there's some correlation there too.
Hmm. I don't like shooting without music.
Yeah, me neither. Although maybe that means we should do it, make ourselves uncomfortable.
There you
I don't
go.
know.
See what we create, right? See what comes out of that.
Right. Let's see. There's a question here. Are there any creative limitations you put on yourself for fun? Um, yes, and I'll be honest, I'm guilty of not doing this as much in the last year as I had made habit prior. So one of my big 2024 goals is just to start playing again, and I actually just scheduled a play date with my favorite collaborator. He's my buddy that does hair. We need to figure out what we're going to do still. But basically, when I have creative time, the parameter I put on myself is simply it has to be something that's outside my comfort zone. Like we're gonna play with a star filter and like figure out what that even does and if we can make it look cool. Or we're gonna shoot everything in black and white. Or we're only gonna use natural light and like take away the safety net of controlling everything with artificial light. And I found like photography is so there's so many dialects of the language that contain such a depth of beauty. It's really a bummer to limit yourself to just one. So I honestly like it gives me a lot of respect for artists that have a style that's maybe say like natural light and they post process a certain way and it just contains this like intense beauty and I want to figure out how they did that. The guy I was just referencing when I said that is a guy from Instagram that just photographed Metallica on their tour. And he does these intimate black and white with a lot of texture portraits that just were perfect for that music. Um, so the limitation is not like the same all the time. It's whatever I need in the moment, I think, is the
Hmm.
answer to that question. And if you don't know what you need, then just make one up. Or like open a magazine and see, flip until something inspires you, and then figure out how
There
to
you go.
reverse engineer it and fumble through it until you get close. And then you'll learn a new technique.
Yeah,
So it takes time, but the only thing that's in your way is yourself.
that's
So
right. That's right.
we're getting a lot more
Awesome.
questions. Do you want to read these or do you want me to keep reading these?
I'm comfortable with either one, but I'm enjoying this right now.
Yeah,
You got me thinking about this stuff right now, so I'm in my own head.
that's good. That's good. It's we're all on this crazy journey together, aren't we? It's
That's
fun
right.
to get to talk to people that think the same way. Um, Sometimes it's difficult to turn down clients or organizations because they don't align with your values or vision. I would like more details about what you're trying to ask. Is it Nakai?
Yes, yes.
Could you elaborate on that in the comments maybe? Um, I don't know. I usually don't. Like sometimes if I really just don't want to do something, I will send a price quote that's like really high. Because then if I have to end up doing it anyways, at least I'll have a good attitude about it. Rather than just be like, no, I disagree with you as a person. I don't know. I haven't encountered a situation, I guess, that comes to mind with what I know from that question so far. So elaborate and we'll see if we can get going on that. Edward, how do you turn this passion into a lucrative business? That's a good question. For me, it happens a lot more quickly if you can confine yourselves to pre-existing markets. So I'll give a personal example. I've always been very enamored with magazine photography that's done like New York and LA, like Vogue and Rolling Stone and all the great um, portrait work is like the style that's always made me feel deeply. But I live in Iowa where that doesn't exist. But we do have high school seniors that get graduation portraits, and we have weddings, and we have family portraits. So I tapped into those pre-existing markets, but just tried to implement the style that I love, and that ended up working out for me, making a very fresh alternative that was very successful in my market compared to everyone else that was servicing in a more old school style, if that makes sense. And then I did that for a decade while I finally built up the chops and started dabbling in the commercial and advertising work. And that world is more of a, it's less consistent and it's more of a long game. And I don't have a clear answer on that. But if you want to do portraits, I feel like you can do that anywhere. I have a buddy that lives in a tiny town in the middle of Iowa, and people come to him from all over the country because his style is so unique. So, Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. Um,
True.
I know that some markets are, definitely more ripe to give you money than others. So, the strategies that you use to get there vary a lot based on where you are, I'm sure. And that's one of the things whenever there's a speaker that's like, this is the marketing secret to make you successful. I'm always like, based on where you live and who you've been marketing to, but like there's people in PPA from all over the country and like every demographic is niche. So you kind of just have to figure out what the market is and how to tap into it. And then if you do that with contagious passion, you'll have quicker success for sure.
Dan, do you think it's better to like tap into your local market first before being willing to travel outside of your market or your
Yeah.
area?
For me, it helps with stability. Like you need to have a base before you can deviate from it. I mean, back when I photographed a lot of weddings, we traveled all the time for that. But now I have kids, so I don't do that anymore just because now the whole point of having a business is to give you the lifestyle that you want. And I see a lot of people that have their own business where it's the opposite. And I've been guilty of this too, where like you build this thing, but then it dictates your lifestyle because you're chained to it. So be careful what you build, is the flip
Hmm.
side. Um, I feel like you can always hustle for a few years and like build something that's making money if you're willing to exchange your time and energy for that. So right now I've kind of pendulumed into trying to be as involved of a parent as I can and like work less for the season while they're in my house and they still like me and I have an impact on who they become. Um, and I get a lot of flack from peers sometimes that are like, you don't do this. You could make so much money if you did this. Yes, I could, but that would take all my time. And then I would ultimately fail in alignment with my personal goals, which is doing things more important than making money. So I don't know if that was a good answer, but that's
No,
my
you got to
soap.
set your priorities.
Yeah.
You got to set your priorities.
All right. We got another Edward. Should he sell copies of the photos? Wait. Should you sell copies of photos you do, or should you do sessions, or should you do both? I'm assuming you're talking about selling photos like fine art prints. And if you are, I've done some of that. It's very hit or miss, and it's really hard to make a full time living doing that. If you look at the state of photography thing that PPA just did with like Shoot Proof and Miller's, did you see this, Jamel? The results. People that try and make a living off of fine art prints, you don't gross very much typically, unless you're like Peter Lick and you've got galleries and it's kind of a business structure that's aimed at volume. So I always have that be secondary, where if I shoot art, it's for me and I might print it and put it in my studio. And someday if someone is like, hey, that's really cool, can I get a copy of that? Then I'll just give them a price and sell it. But my business is predicated on commissions. So it's portraits of people because in the Midwest where I live, people love their families a lot. And people are a lot more likely to decorate their homes with artwork featuring their loved ones than they are to decorate their home with artwork of generic pretty stuff. Um, Hopefully that helps. So I think you should definitely do sessions if you want to start making consistent income. and then shoot for yourself
Absolutely.
all you want. And then like 20 years from now, you might have enough content to publish a coffee table book. Or like when you're shooting for yourself, never think short game. Always just do it because you have to do it because you love it. And then I think it will present itself in the future, like what you're supposed to do with that. Good question though.
Yep. Yep. Edward, you can sell a print at the end of your session too. When someone has something tangible in their hands, they're more than likely to make a decision right there on the spot and want more when they have that print in their hands. So consider that
Yeah.
as well. Print on demand is definitely helpful.
Yeah. I have a ton of prints around my studio. Um, Kind of just sets a precedent when people come in, they walk down a hallway filled with really big prints, and it makes it feel, it sets the tone that we're making art that's worthy of being hung on a wall. And ultimately, that's one of the quickest ways to start making decent money at this job is to sell wall art and like shoot for people's homes. If you have a conversation rather than say, meet me in the park, let's take some cool pictures. If you say, hey, where do you want art in your house? And then they show you, and you're like, okay, we have this spot above the couch. Let's create for that. You can take a lot more effective photograph if you're shooting for the end result than if you're just trying to make cool pictures in a volume sentiment. Okay,
That's
we
right.
got a follow up here. If you want to change how you shoot or you're not aligned in terms of the end goal purpose of the shoot, if you want to change how you shoot, and you are currently in business, that's going to probably be a slower process than you want it to be. That's kind of what I'm doing right now. I've been pushing my style in a different direction over about the last 5 years, and it just baby steps every shoot. If I have a client that wants to pay me, I'll do the work even if it's not my favorite, and that's just because I have kids to feed. So I don't know. If you're not aligned in terms of the end goal purpose, I'm trying to think of a scenario if there was just like a business that was really unethical and like made me feel gross. Technically, I might just bid them a really high amount because then if they hire me, then I can take that money from them and like do something good with it. You know what I mean? We've done that before where we're taking this check from this transaction that maybe didn't feel the most full of integrity and we're going to just donate it to this or like spend it on this good cause in the community. And like it's a way of almost like turning dirty money into clean money, if that makes
I
any
love
sense.
that. You're
That
washing it.
registers
Yeah.
with, yeah, that registers with my morality because someone's going to do the job and someone's going to get paid. So if you don't do it, who knows where that money's going to end up, right? So maybe that helps cleanse your mind a
I
little
love
bit.
that mindset. That's a fantastic mindset. That actually may make the client change their mindset too, because they're
Yeah,
kind of tied to that cause, you know.
right,
So I like
right.
that mindset. I
So
want to
I
share
don't know.
something with you.
Yeah,
I do. I want to share something with you because it pertains to your session, and I have four survey results that I want to share with you. I'm not sure if you had a chance to see them, but
didn't.
you had a lot of comments on yours. I was like, let me just grab four random ones. All right.
Okay.
And this is the feedback we got from your Shoot with Purpose session at Imaging USA. The first one was fantastic! Exclamation, exclamation. Inspiring me to get back in the studio. For a photographer to
Mm,
say that, that's pretty big. Like, I'm getting back to work because I heard what he had to say and I need to apply this. Um,
that's
the next one was wonderful. Tone, content, heart, and delivery all superb. Thank you. The next one was wow, just wow! Exclamation, exclamation, capitals everywhere. Excellent presentation. I learned so much and intend to go home and do the work. Please, please bring the speaker back. Fantastic. And the last
sweet.
one, this class was, oh my gosh, out of this world. I loved every bit of it. I am ready to do the homework. Love it so much.
Did anyone that's listening to this right now do your homework?
Hopefully they're out shooting still, but I'm sure
Hopefully.
someone did. Put us in the comment.
Hopefully.
Let us know in the questions if you've been doing your homework. We want to know.
Because we all need accountability with that to be real. So the fact that anything I said made someone actually get off their butt and do it, that's why I gave that class. That makes me happy. because we all need that. I have people in my life that do that to me too, and I don't know that I'd be nearly as effective without them.
It'll show in the work, right? If you're not holding yourself accountable,
Yeah.
it'll show in the work, and you're gonna feel it. You're gonna feel it.
Well, is this thing going to expire in when the timer goes off?
It won't expire, but we do have a time.
Yeah.
I'm not a time Nazi at all, so if it
You
happens to go over a
wanna?
little bit, if you have a few moments to answer some questions, we can
Yeah,
do it.
I'm peeking at the chat and trying to see if we have any other good questions here. We have a
Yeah, we got a
lot.
ton. Edward is just shooting them out there, aren't you, Edward? He wants to know.
Art, art form that I get inspiration from, music is big, movies and books. Anything that makes you, books are good because you have to use your imagination to visualize the story, which makes you actually exercise your power of visualization. Movies do that for you. So you can be inspired by like color and light when you watch a movie, but I feel like it's more effective to actually read and have to imagine it because that applies to what you do when you have a camera in front of you. Advice for first time entrants of the IPC: don't give up once you get your heart ripped out. That's my advice. Long story short, the first time I ever entered, I was fresh like a baby, and I entered like I didn't know anything about it. So I printed full bleed pictures and I just titled everything like the name of the client. And my favorite picture was this engagement couple because of the emotion it conveyed. And it was like this backlit wash of flare, black and white. I still remember their name. I still remember the picture. And I went into the gallery. I was like, where's my picture? And they're like, sir, it was below exhibition standards. We can only hang it if it scores a 70 or higher. And my picture did so bad they wouldn't even hang it in the show. And I was just like, it hurt really bad, but also it pulled a veil of ignorance off my eyes and made me realize how much there was to learn. And that year, I just dove in and learned as fast as I could. And then the next year, I came back. And I'm not saying that this is a thing that you should expect because it still has only happened to me one time, but I had a print the following year that got a perfect 100 score. So in a year, I was able to go from one extreme to the other because I took the feedback and like used it as fuel. But it's really easy to take the feedback and get discouraged by it. And I would just say like be prepared for that and use it as fuel. And the more you can get specific critique about like the things that are holding you back in your own work, it's almost like you're never going to see it in your own work until someone points it out to you, and then it's all you're going to see. Like as soon as someone's like, well, you got a tree coming right out of the back of their head, then all you start seeing in every picture is like all the pictures of trees coming out of people's heads. And it's just this,
Guilty.
it's a never ending journey. Yeah. And I'm still there
Absolutely.
where like there's not a shoot that I do now where I don't leave and go, oh, I wish I would have done this different now that I have time to like process and think, not in the heat of the moment. So you can learn a lot. And especially, I did like 5 years of print competition pretty seriously. And that was a 5 year growth period that was like, I've probably never grown that much in that short a time before. And then I came to a point where the direction I want my work to go is this way. And IPC is kind of over here. And I intentionally broke from doing it just so I could focus on this commercial vision and style without having contamination of other people's opinions. So it depends on what your goals are. And now I'm back to competing just because I think it's really fun. But yeah, if it's going to help you get to where you want to be, do it. And if it's not, it's time and money. So use your discretion.
Yeah. Let's say jump out to MIR now, because before you guys didn't have that years ago. Now we offer the merit image review. You can get
Yeah,
merits that way. Um, and then you can also get a critique. So if you want to jump there, start there first with a couple images and then go into IPC.
right. But it's a good use of your time, especially if you make camaraderie and you make some friends that do it too. And then beforehand, you guys are sending images back and forth for feedback, and like the community aspect of it was maybe my favorite part because I had learned more from that part, just preparing my stuff to be entered than I would from the feedback of entering it, you know? Especially
Awesome,
once you,
awesome.
I don't know, when you sit in that judging room, like even at this imaging, I went a day early to watch judging and I didn't know anyone in the room. I just like sit by people and then like talk to him, and we'd be cheering stuff on together. And then at the end of the day, I'd be like, "Whoa, you're actually the person that made my favorite picture," and I had no idea I was sitting by you. It's like a cool way of connecting with people. So
That's
yeah,
awesome. Well, we're not going to take up too much time. So, we got time for just a few more questions,
we got one
and then
more Edward.
eventually,
It looks like you have to have a studio to do sessions. No, you don't. When I started doing this, I lived in the attic of my grandma's house, and I didn't bring clients up there. That's just where I lived at the time. But all my work was on location. So if I had to have a consultation with the client, I just do it at the coffee shop and like bring my book of prints, like portfolio, and show them my stuff. Um, I have friends that are really quite successful that have done both. Like they've had a studio, a storefront where they run business, and then they've also scrapped that and had seasons where they just have all their gear in their car and like go to their clients' homes. And even if they do in-person sales afterwards, they just go do that at the client's home, and they kill so much overhead that way. So it's a personal choice. Now at this point in my journey, like the studio is pretty clutch for me because I do a lot of headshots and sessions that are profitable because all the stuff's already set up. So it's not very much time. And I'm kind of filling my days with more microtransactions just because that gives me more time with my kids. But you can make it work in any scenario. You really just have to get confident executing, like learning how to control light in outdoor situations, which is a doozy, but it's attainable for sure, especially the more you practice. So hopefully that's encouraging to you. I got a studio partway into my journey, and it's been a big asset. But I feel like I'm really glad I had to um, earn that right versus just like have it out of the gate because it made me not take it for granted. I feel like if I would have had it from the get go, I wouldn't have really known how to use it, and it probably would have been more of a crutch and a detriment than an asset. So I hope that helps. I think that's
yeah,
it for what we got question wise.
yeah.
Good
You can
questions, you
also
guys.
get an Airbnb too. Didn't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt you. Sorry. But
you could do
Airbnb
that.
is a great way to do it. Get a cheap studio. You know.
Right. The main thing is just making sure that you're profitable in what you're doing, or at least you're working your way towards that.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
so many different niches and genres, and the definition of that is up to you. Well, what do you think? You got any last questions for me? Any last
Myself? Oh, I got tons of questions.
anticipation? Oh, hey, give me your best one.
I- One of my best ones, I would say, you mentioned the star filter earlier,
Oh yeah,
and I remember looking at the image where you used it, and it was actually a food product. I think it was. I think it was a burger. I'm not sure what it was.
was it
So
coffee? I think it was coffee.
I think so. It was more than one item on the
Yeah, it was like
display.
donuts and coffee. It was a Dunkin' thing.
Yeah, yeah. So it was a Dunkin' thing. Absolutely, you're right. And what, like, when you're doing products like that, like food, I would never think of that because I've seen people do wine bottles and different stuff differently. How do you approach products like that with that kind of level of creativity? Like, how do you know
So
how far
on
to
that
experiment?
shoot, we did that shot without it, and then I was like, I want to do this one more time real quick with it because I think it'd be dope. And then it was, and the client agreed. Um, if you're on your own time, you just try it and you see what works. Keep in mind, there's always a tendency to take a new technique too far. Like, oh, this guy just got a star filter. You can tell because all of his work looks ridiculous. You have to dial things back and use them tastefully. And honestly, I haven't used that very many times yet. But when I'm playing with my kids on a Saturday and I might take my camera to the park, that's the time when I'll throw it on and just screw around and like use that no pressure circumstance to figure out what it can even do. And then that way, once I know what it can do, then I'll be on a shoot where I'll see in my head, like, this would add a little extra texture to these bubbles on top of this coffee. It could be cool. Let's try it. But that seed wouldn't have been in my mind if I wouldn't have been dinking around with it on my own time around the same time. So there's always a harmony of having this be your job and having this be your hobby, and like those two things interplay with each other all the time.
We should be happy to practice as photographers. Like, Play with
Yeah.
your gear. Play with those
Like,
lights that you just bought.
well, can you imagine, like, think about when you first started doing this. I'm assuming if you're like me, all you wanted to do was just shoot. And the thing that was annoying is you didn't have anybody to practice on because you sucked and you hadn't earned the right to have people say yes to you yet. Um, Now we have that. Like, any day where you don't have work is an opportunity where you can just play.
Yeah,
And you can call that work because it's technically helping you grow. So, what a luxury is that to have play be tied to our livelihood? I don't know. It's pretty cool.
it absolutely is. Yeah. I got.
So,
Uh,
oh, go ahead.
could you offer a piece of advice to? I know a photographer who's talented, and she has a client. She does portrait work, and she goes to a client's house and she shoots, and she gives the client what they want. But in the back of her mind, she knows that she's better than what the client wants,
Yeah.
and she has this creative side of going towards like maybe fashion photography and doing a little bit more on a creative side. But sometimes she kind of holds back on site because she's, maybe nervous, or trying to experiment on site. She's not comfortable with that. What advice could you give to someone like that?
I will say that in my, however long this has been, it's been a long time. I have 95% of the shoots I do, the client never picks my favorite images as their favorite images. And that doesn't make me not want to still shoot them for me. So when I'm doing a shoot, I kind of have two tiers. I have like this is going to check the boxes of what they expect, and then this is going to check the boxes of what I expect. And if what they love doesn't come from my box, that doesn't mean it's not worth still taking the time to fill that for myself. And then I can use the stuff that I like in portfolio or on Instagram or something. You don't have to post the client's favorites necessarily. Um, but I know that feeling very, very well, where you're like, we could push this in totally the different direction. But you also have to be viewing it through the lens of the way you can service and love your client the most is to capture them in the way that is the most harmonious with who they are. So if their aesthetic is very obvious, the best thing you can do is to capture them according to that aesthetic versus try and make them look like they're in a fashion magazine if that would be an incongruent fit. So that's why it all boils down to being like a master of styles and then discerning which is the most appropriate for a client. But she should absolutely be filling herself up by shooting what she loves, even if it's on her own time. And then maybe she does that for 5 years, and all of a sudden she has a big enough portfolio that she can make like a different brand or a different product line or something that's just that direction. But you can't expect to have people hire you to do a thing that they haven't. If they go to your website and look at your work, that's what they expect. So if you're showing safe stuff, people are only going to hire you for safe stuff. And it takes a long time to build up a body of work that has more of a strong sense of style to it. It took me probably close to 10 years before people started hiring me to do Dan style work. And once I hit that point, it was like the stuff we were able to make was so much more fun because I didn't have to spend time filling their box and my box. It was the same box. But there's a dance to be danced there between those things. And ultimately, when you're on the clock for a client, you're doing your best for them. And that's the number one thing that matters.
Awesome. Service your client first, and then take the extra for you, for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Awesome.
like take a day off and make it for you if you need to, you know, even if it means making a little less money that year. If you're more fulfilled, I think that will ultimately tie back into you doing a better job and making more money if you set aside time for that mental health care that we all need as photographers.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Dan. Thank you so much. She's going to appreciate that answer. And hopefully she's on here listening right now.
Hey, maybe. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's a good topic. We all need it too. Like we all need validated that what we feel in our inner core needs to be made, like is worth being made, you know?
That's absolutely, absolutely.
It's hard to
All right.
take a
We're going to
risk.
give the last question to Kayla Chase.
Kayla Chase, what's it say? How long does it take to set up your shoot before you start with a client? Depends on the shoot. If it's a headshot, they just show up and we figure it out when they get here. If it's a senior, we'll do a phone call. They'll text me pictures of their outfits and I'll preset some stuff. So when they get here, we can just start shooting. And I might spend an hour setting stuff up. If it's that Caitlin Clark shoot we talked about earlier, we went the day before to the location and spent a half day pre-setting and pre-lighting so that we could come back the following morning and be shooting by, I think we had to start shooting at like 6:30 in the morning or something ridiculous. So we didn't have time to set up the day of. So it was all the day before, and then that was just like added on to the shoot as a half day for setup. So it's the answer to that question is all over the map. However long you need to set up to do what you need to do is the correct answer, I think. But if you're taking too long to set up versus how much you're getting paid, then you need to get paid more, or you need to simplify
That's right.
what you're doing because there needs to be a harmony there too. And I'm guilty of spending too much time like over delivering and doing beyond what I'm being paid for. But I think that's also a big, like I just kind of assume that in my workflow. And like I tell people this shoot's going to be 2 hours and it might be 2.5, it might be 3 if we're getting crazy. But I am just willing to eat that cost if it's filling me up and we're going long because of that. So I don't know. It's subjective. Good
Yeah,
question.
absolutely. All right, then. Well, that's all the time we have today for Imaging USA Unpacked. Thank you so much, Dan, for your advice. I mean, it was
Yeah,
very inspiring for me. We had some great questions today. I'm glad your session at Imaging USA was such a success because you have so much talent and great work.
I
Again,
appreciate
everyone,
that.
check out Dan's website. It's the
I'll
truth.
come back. I'll come back again someday if you want. Just let me know.
Noted.
Okay.
Noted. You highly requested, so that's something that we definitely have to consider. So, and imaging is always going to be here. So,
Yeah.
thank you for that, Dan. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you
So
guys for
everyone,
tuning
yep, and get out there and shoot something. Go play with your cameras and lenses and lights and create.
in.
All right, and put
It's
it on your
Monday, so
portfolio.
you have until Friday 5 p.m. to make at least one dope thing that you're proud of. Okay?
All right,
Pinky
you
swear.
heard him.
Do it too.
Awesome. I'm gonna create something. I will. I'll do it.
Yeah, I know you will. I'm gonna do it
That's
too.
right. Awesome. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much. Again, Dan, thank you. Stay tuned in for the next Imaging USA Unpacked. And have a fantastic rest of the day and keep inspiring.
Deal.
Bye, y'all. Peace.